I'm going to tell some stories about some crazy first dates that I've had over the years. Most of them occurred when I was in New York City with American women. In foreign countries, I would not say crazy first dates, but for New York City with American women, definitely. So I was on this date with this woman, and she told me about how she had had an awful date with someone. And she went on and on about how awful it was. And she said, I asked her what happened. She said, well, his phone rang and he got up and he walked away from the table. They were at a restaurant and he spoke on the phone for like a half an hour. And she was really, really upset by this. And I said, you have no idea what you're talking about. So I'm going to tell you some of mine. I went on a date with a girl and we sat there and talked to her. She was really interested and she was happy and I'm sure she was beautiful. And then at some point, after like a half an hour or an hour, she said to me, oh, by the way, I have a boyfriend. I said, and I was like, I wasn't really cognitive as to what she meant by that. I heard her say it, and I just continued the conversation. I was just like, so what sports do you like to do? So because I was really naive when I was younger. And she said, I have a boyfriend, and he's here right now. And she said, oh, I have to go. She figured out that, like I didn't really catch on to what she meant. She said, I have to go. It was nice meeting you. I said, okay. And I mentioned I had to make a phone call before I left. And this was the days when you used payphones. And the phones were actually behind her. And I went and used the phone call, turned around, and she was there kissing her boyfriend right in front of me, as if they arranged themselves to make sure that I would see them. It's not like they walked out of the cafe or anything like that. And we were at the absolute back of the cafe where the bathrooms and the payphone were. So she's kissing her boyfriend, and it was a long kiss. And, people don't do that. People don't go to a cafe and make this long kiss. She was putting on a show or something. And then I guess I just walked out without saying anything. But then when I started thinking about it, I was like, he was sitting behind me during the whole date. That's what happened. That was weird. So I had a lot of weird dates where I would like date a woman and they would start talking about rape real fast. The conversation would turn to rape almost immediately. And when that happens, I'm like, you're really making me uncomfortable when you start talking about things like that. And like they would say things like, when I go on a date, I don't let anyone touch my drink. And I was like, only an idiot would let someone else touch your drink. Why are you telling me this? Or they would say, my mom told me this. And whenever they would say, so basically I had this date with this girl. We were at a cafe and she's sitting there and she had her drink and she's making some sort of a comment. She's talking about her drink and drugs in her drink and things like that. And I don't know why she kept on doing this, but it was really weird. And like her mom lectures her about, so I would get lectured as to what the parents would tell them about safely dating someone. And I'd be like, where are we? We're in a cafe at 1 o'clock p.m. in New York City, one of the most populated, dense cities in the world. Why do you think that I'm different than any of these other people? Why would I be the danger to you, but all these other men around you are not? How am I no different from that guy sitting right there? The only difference is I'm sitting at the same table as you. And I would get these safety lectures from women on dates. And I really don't remember the discussion about rape. I remember that they would talk about it. And I probably was startled by it back then. It's out of sight, out of mind right now. So we're going to go back to crazy dates. So I had a date with this woman, New York City, Times Square. We went to eat at the restaurant right at Times Square. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. There's that one restaurant that everybody loves more than all the others. It's like a barbecue place. I think they had onion rings. I probably ate onion rings. And you go to Times Square, there's a giant billboard, the ball that falls, and there's a police station around there, and then there's a restaurant probably on the second floor. So we're at the table, we're on this date, and she told me all sorts of weird stories. This is a weird person. she was telling me about a previous date she had with some guy, and she said they met at the mall. And when you live in New York City, women have really unrealistically high standards. We have to go to Balthazar. They want to go to the places where they get an expensive meal that's really small. They don't care. And you're with a guy who wants to eat a really hearty meal, and you want to go someplace where it's expensive and you get a small portion, gourmet or whatever. So she was telling me about how she met this guy at the mall. If I told some woman, the average New York City woman, oh yeah, let's go on a date, let's meet at the mall, the date would not happen. And I don't remember the rest of the story. But at some point, she started refusing to communicate with me. She just sat there silently. So I said to her, oh, didn't you say you needed to make a phone call? She didn't answer. I said, there's a payphone. I think it's down. There's a payphone downstairs. I saw it on the way in. You said you need to make a phone call. She didn't answer. And I said, do you need money to make a phone call? And she didn't answer. And she just sat there smiling, looking at me. And I said to her, you need money? You want me to give you a quarter? And just in case it's 2 quarters, you want me to give you 2 quarters so you can make the phone call? You said you needed to make a phone call. And she just smiled at me. And I said, is your brother here? Because you told me that your brother was going to pick you up and you needed to call him when you were ready to be picked up. It's getting kind of late. Everybody's leaving. They're going to close soon, and I really don't want to stay all night. It was getting late. It was 10:30 p.m., 11 o'clock p.m., something like that. And she didn't answer. And then she got up and left. And I think I walked with her. I think because I kind of remember her being at the phone and giving her quarters and stuff like that. And she talked on the phone. And then she hung up the phone. And then I said to her, so what did your brother say? And she didn't answer me. And then I said, okay, goodbye. And I shook her hands and I left. And I went home, and then either that night or the next morning, I got an email from her. And she said, why did you leave? And I said, I was talking to you and asking you what was going on, like about your brother and the phone call you told me that you needed to make, and you didn't answer me. And I asked you many times. And then she said, you look like the type of guy that could read my mind. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? And obviously, I did not continue the conversation, but it's like, this woman's crazy. Okay, so this next story is not a crazy date. I met this woman, Upper West Side, and it was a blind date. And the first thing she said to me was she's got a problem with her car. She said it was overheating or something like that. And it was winter time. So I had to go. I said, okay, let me take a look at it. And I went and I looked at her car, and she opened the hood, and I guess there was no engine coolant. And I remember getting on the ground underneath the car and looking at it. I said, okay, there's a hole right over here, and it's not at the bottom of the radiator. It's halfway up. So what that means is you're going to be able to hold a certain amount of coolant, etc. I won't bore you with the details. And I basically told her what to do. You're going to have to put water in. We're not going to, it was late at night. We're not going to find a gas station where we can get engine coolant. Actually, there would be if she drove home, because she lived like in Westchester. She was a car owner coming from outside of the Manhattan. And I probably told her, put engine coolant in. For now, we're going to put water in. We put in like 2 gallons of water we probably bought at the bodega where they sell soda and stuff like that. And then I said, can you put it in a garage? She said, yeah, it'll be in a garage. And I said, it's not that cold tonight. It's not going to freeze, so don't worry about it. But you got to put some engine coolant in there and take it to the mechanic tomorrow. And I said, you know what? Oops, I put water in your radiator. We got to cancel the date. You got to leave now. And it wouldn't have mattered, I'm sure, because it's not like it's going to freeze in an hour or something like that. So I was, at the time I wasn't thinking. I said, I put water in your radiator and it's a cold night. You got to leave now. I didn't want anything bad to happen to her car. And she left. And I never heard from her again. So another thing that happened was I went on a lot of dates because I had a profile on the dating service that was really popular to the point where I was getting a request once a day for a date. And I always said yes. So I went on a date every day for a month. I went on 30 dates in a row. And I would go out and meet these women, and I'm a very charismatic guy, and I would usually do most of the talking. And at the end, these women would say, I want to see you again. And these were women who really knew how to speak for themselves. I was pretty amazed at how well spoken they were. And they would say to me, I'd like to see you again. Here's my phone number. Give me a call. And I was like, wow, no woman was so direct with me. And this would happen often. And in fact, that's the way all the dates were ending. 30 dates in a row, they were all saying, here's my phone number. I want to see you again. And then I would go home, say, okay, I'm going to call this girl. And I was totally clueless, naive when I was young. I could not call a woman and say, hello, I'm the guy you went on a date with, and stuff like that. I had no ability to do that. So what I did was I got a piece of paper and I wrote down on the piece of paper, hello, my name is David. We met last night. And because you always get the answering machine. And I would say, why don't you give me a call? Here's my number. So I did that, and I would always get the answering machine. They'd never answer the phone. And I left messages for all these women. There was like a small fraction, maybe 1 out of 20 or 1 out of 30 that I would not call back. And what was happening, and I didn't even connect the two, is that I would be at home and my phone would ring and I'd answer the phone and say hello, and then nobody would say anything. And I would hang up. And then it would happen again, and it was happening every day. And I thought, this is weird. Why am I getting all these calls? And I actually was out of my mind real fast. Wrong number. I don't know. But then when I stopped dating, the calls stopped. And I started thinking, that's really weird. Maybe those women were returning my phone calls. And the other issue is, even though I went on 30 dates and they all offered, they said, I want to see you again without me offering anything. They interrupted me to say this, gave me their phone number. I never got messages on my machine from anybody. So then there was this other woman. She was really cute, and she was petite, and she was energetic and outspoken. And she said to me that she was dating somebody who was like I don't think it was the president of CBS, but she said something like one of the vice presidents at CBS. She made some sort of a statement like that. And she gave me, and like I said, I never had to ask these women for their phone number. She gave me her name and phone number. And she said she wanted to see me again, give me a call. And I was a really good-looking guy. I wish I could show you a photo. I was really thin and really attractive. I looked like the guy from Will and Grace, Will. That's what I look like when I'm thin. And I called her, and I left a message to say, this is David. Give me a call. Here's my number. And usually I would call a woman 3 times before I would stop. I would give them 3 phone calls. And then the next day I called again, and she had a different message on her voicemail. And it said something like, Michael and I are not here right now. Please leave a message. And it wasn't even like that. I think she really made it clear that she's living with some other guy who's her boyfriend. She left the message in such a way, and she might not have, and she could have just made a fake message, but she left some strange message that I think was targeted. I'm like, okay, so she changed the message because she didn't want me calling. I went on this other date. Okay, this is really weird. So I went on this date. There was another guy there with the same name as me. And this guy was tall, and he had some sort of a brace outside of his mouth going around to the front of his mouth. I don't know what you would call it, but he had this big wire going in front of his mouth and around to the back of his head. And I showed up early, got there 15 minutes early. And the way you do it is you call the restaurant, and they know that you're meeting somebody. They only have the first name. You don't necessarily give them your last name. So I went there and said, my name is so-and-so. I'm meeting somebody here. And so, oh, yeah, she's already here. And they went to the back, and I was sitting down talking to this girl. And she was weird. I didn't really enjoy talking to her. And while I was talking to her, she was constantly rolling her eyes. But it wasn't like she was rolling them at me. It was like she was rolling them because she sympathized, because I would say funny things. It was like a person might do so when they laugh, or if I say, oh, I know this weird guy, and so, oh yeah, weird guys, she's constantly doing that again and again and again. And I said, okay, this woman is a little weird, and I don't remember what she was talking to me about, but at some point, someone came and interrupted me and said, we made a mistake. This was like after 40 minutes or something like that, a long time. And I said, we made a mistake. The people at the restaurant said, this is not the woman that was your date. And the women must have had the same names too, because we would have known if the names were wrong. I would have said, that's not the name of the person. Your name is not the name of the person. Okay, maybe we didn't ask each other's names. We just sat down and started talking. I don't remember. So she said, your date is actually sitting at the bar. And the other guy came in, and I saw this braces, and he was smiling, and he was really happy. And they said something like, do you want to switch? And somebody said yes. Or maybe they brought everybody together. And somebody said, yes, I want to switch. It was the other woman. She was very adamant, because she didn't want to date the guy with the braces, right? And we must have, okay, so I really don't remember, but I remember seeing this woman, or maybe the restaurant person said that she wanted to switch, and I hadn't met the woman yet. Because I remember we were in a separate room. I remember seeing the guy come in, or maybe they said, do you want to switch? She really wants to. I said, okay, I'll switch. And I walked in the other room, and I saw her, and she had this really bitchy look on her face. She did not look happy. And I sat down with her, and it was unusual because she was a very tall woman, and it's not normal that a tall woman would be on a date with me being 5'6". And the heights are on the dating profiles. How did this happen? I don't know. So we sat there and we talked for like 5 minutes, and that was it. And then she left. And I think she may have even told me, you're not tall. The other guy was. So there was another time that I went on a date with this girl. I was 5'6". Okay, so what happened was the other girl came like 2 hours early, which is why she was already there. So I came 2 hours early. I was reading a book. So I met this other woman. I'm 5'6.5". On the dating profiles, I used to put 5'7". It's really tough for a guy. If you're 5'6.5", it's really tough to put 5'6". Every half inch counts. And I was on a date with a woman who was 5'7", and she sat there and she bitched at me. And she said, I'm 5'7". You're not 5'7". And she wanted me to stand up and all this stuff. And I don't remember it being a long date. And I remember her trying to trick me into standing up. She said, let's stand up and let's go walk over there. I was like, why? Why did you want to walk over there for? And I'm also a person with a short upper body, which means that when I'm 5'6" and I'm sitting next to someone else 5'6", there's a good chance I'm going to look shorter than that person. So I'm at more of a disadvantage when I'm sitting next to someone who's 5'7". I'm going to look even shorter. Even though I thought we were about the same height, we stood up, we were about the same height, but she was taller than me, not considerably taller. And I was 5'6". I had a girlfriend who was shorter than me. Can't tell you how much shorter she was, but when we sat down, she was taller than me. So that happens. Another crazy girlfriend, another crazy date story. I don't know if I want to go into my crazy girlfriends. That could be a long one. So I'll tell you another story. I moved to a new town. I was there for like a week or two. I don't think it was my first day. And I was on the dating website, and this woman sent me an email. She loved my profile. And what she wrote was really cool. It was like a great email to receive. And she asked me if I wanted to meet her. She didn't have a profile. This was 9 a.m. I showed up at work 9 a.m., checked my emails, and it's there. And she asked me if I wanted to meet. I said yes. She said, meet me at 10:30 at the park. And so it was only an hour and a half later, and she had no profile. So I went to the park, and I met her, and she did most of the talking. She was a talkative person. And I looked really good at the time because I was thin. And she said, so you want to see each other again? I said, okay. And then we started dating. And what was and this is what she told me. She said, "Well, I wasn't expecting to meet somebody. I just was on the dating site because I was looking for the profile of my ex-husband." And she was telling me about her ex-husband's profile. And she said he had dreamy eyes or bedroom eyes or something like that. And it's funny because she had been divorced twice. Both of her husbands had names that were nearly identical. One of them was something like Stapp, and the other one was something like Strap. And she married one of them was a sham marriage. She said, "Oh, it was a sham marriage. I just married him so he could become a citizen." So, that's one of the things that she told me. So her ex-husband actually found out who I was, and he was pissed. And he tried to run me over with his car. He actually did. I used to work at the library just as a volunteer because I had my own business and I had nothing to do with all my free time. And he sent his son in to point me out. And so he came over and said hello to me. And that was it. And I said, "Hello, how you doing?" But the father wasn't there. I didn't know who he was. But on the way out, I saw this guy and he gave me this evil look. And when I was walking through the parking lot to go to my car, he almost ran me over with his car, and I saw him drive away. And I said, "Oh, it's a Subaru Outback." I know that's the car. She told me that they had a Subaru Outback. And I said, "Okay, so that's the ex-boyfriend." And there were other things that he did. Like if we were to go on a date, we were going to Niagara Falls, he wanted to interfere. So he had to pick up the son, and he would just say, "Sorry, not showing up." And that's it. And he delayed us like 2 hours. It's really no big deal. I mean, but he would do things like that. And I put a picture of our trip to Niagara Falls, and I don't know how he found it, but he found it on my website. So he knew who I was. And he took that picture and he emailed it to her. It was a picture of me and her at Niagara Falls. So, okay. I went on a date with a girl who for an hour, this was common. They would say, "Do you have a girlfriend?" I would say no. "Do you have a wife?" I would say no. "Have you ever been married?" They would say no. "Are you divorced?" Now, keep in mind, I just said I was never married, but they would say it. They would say, "Are you divorced?" I would say no. They would say, "Are you sure?" I would be like, "Yes, I'm sure." And then they would say, "Are you sure you don't have a girlfriend?" See, yeah, I'm sure. And I was in Colombia. They would say, "Colombian guys have 5 girlfriends." And I would be like, "No, they don't. It's not possible for Colombian guys to have 5 girlfriends. It would never work." But what would happen is they would just start asking over again, "Do you have a girlfriend?" And it'd be, "No." "Are you married?" I said, "I already answered that question." And with one woman, it went on for an hour. I was like, we've been for an hour sitting here talking about whether or not I've been married, and I'm really getting sick of it. I couldn't say that because I didn't speak. She didn't speak English, but that's what I was thinking. And she spoke Spanish, so I was like, okay, this is a problem. I got to change the subject. I don't know. Somehow I changed the subject. And we stayed out there for another hour, and I was like, I'm not going to see this lunatic again. And I ended up meeting tons of women that were just obsessed with this stuff. So there's this other woman, went through the same shit, but by then I had learned. I was like, if a woman asks me if I'm married, I say yes. "Yep, I'm married." And then they would just stand there confused. They wouldn't know what to say next. So I met this woman, and she said, "I want to go to Costa Rica." No, she didn't say Costa Rica. She said, "I want to go to Panama, the country. I want to go to Panama. Let's go this weekend." It was probably a Friday or something. And I said, "Well, I don't want to go to Panama. I've been there before. It's not really a great place to visit. I'd rather go to Costa Rica." And she said, "I've already been to Costa Rica. I don't want to go." I said, okay. So we started talking about different places where we could travel. This is a first date. She wanted to go that weekend. And we both agreed that we wanted to see Venezuela. I don't know the name of the place. There's an island north of Venezuela, but you have to go to Venezuela on the on the international flight and then take a local flight. And okay, let's go. And I'm like, I already realized this woman's a complete nut based on other parts of the conversation. So I said, let's go to the travel agency. And we went to the travel agency and we sat there and we told them, yeah, let's go to this place. I said, hey, just for laughs, let's see the price to go to Costa Rica. Nope. Only this place. And they told us the price and how much money. It was probably like $800 per person. And I could afford the money. And she told me my ex-husband took me wherever I want. And one of the other things that, so just so we get to the point, I at the end told her, no, I'm not going to go with you. I'm not going to buy the tickets. And it's because she's a crazy person. So one of the other things was she drove to the city from out of town. She had to drive like an hour. And it was agreed that I would give her money for gas. And I said, okay, because that's what you got to do. You got to pay for the gas, right? But then she was demanding like $50. I was like, $50 for gas? And you drove an hour? That doesn't cost $50. I mean, it should be more like $10. But I gave her the money anyway. And that was it. So another date, there was this guy, I'm going to have to tell you the longer story. There was a guy who was dating a girl, and I was dating the sister. And the one that he was dating was really beautiful. And the one I was dating, you know, I don't care about looks. I'm just pointing out that she was really beautiful. She was not someone who would be my date. You know, I don't date. Okay, I have, but I don't normally date women that are just extremely beautiful. And he called me up and he said, hey, I want you to meet me at McDonald's. And I said, okay. And I met him at McDonald's. And keep in mind, I only met this guy like once before. And he said, we got to take a picture. I got to take a picture of you or something. He took a picture of me and he said he had to do it because he's lying to her. He really spent the weekend with another woman. So I'm his cover story. And he sent her a message saying, I'm here at McDonald's with Dave. I spent the weekend with Dave. And that was it. And I went home. So then I see this girl and I kind of knew that she was a sister. Maybe I ended up taking the family out to pizza because there were a lot. I remember going out to pizza and there were a lot of people there. And we were talking and I don't remember the other guy's name, but she said, you're friends with Mike and I don't like you. And I said, no, or maybe she just said, I don't like you. And I said, why? She said, because you're friends with Mike. And I'm like, first of all, I'm not friends with Mike. I've only met him once. Or basically, that's all I need to say. I say, I went like this, I am not friends with Mike. I've only met him once, and I don't like him either. In fact, when he told you that I spent the weekend with him and he showed you a picture of us from McDonald's, he told me that he was with another woman for the weekend. I didn't spend the weekend with him. He told me to come to McDonald's so he could take my picture so he could lie to you. And I told her that. And we ate the pizza. I really don't remember her sister, but I remember this girl. They looked different. They looked very different. She did her hair more stylish. She may have been thinner, taller. And I said, hey, let's go see a movie. I'd like to go see, she must have spoken English. I said, I'd like to see The Dictator. And she cried. She started crying. And The Dictator was a movie with Sacha Baron Cohen. It was a comedy where he portrayed Muammar Gaddafi as a dictator of a country. And she cried and cried and cried. She said, I don't want to see The Dictator. And she's crying, crying, crying. I said, why? What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? She said, it's a comedy. And I was like, what are you, crazy? She said, I don't want to see comedy. I don't want to see comedy. She believed that the comedies were bad and they were hurtful. So, okay, this girl's crazy. And that may have been the last time that I dated the sister. It may have been the last time. So another thing that happened, this was very common in Colombia, where you go out on a date, you arrange a date, 6 o'clock, and then you get there at 6 o'clock and they're not there. And then at 6:15, You call them, and they're at home. So, I'm here at the cafe, so I'll be there in 20 minutes. But then they don't show up in 20 minutes. They show up an hour later because they were at home. They'll always say that I'm on my way or I'm in the taxi, but they're not. So this happened many, many times. It was like it's their policy. It's like the policy of people that lived in Barranquilla. I don't think I didn't see this in Medellin and Cali and Bogota and other cities or in Lima, but in Barranquilla, that's what they did. And if you ask them, hey, can you go out on Sunday? It was always, no, my grandmother's birthday. You don't know how many times I heard that. It's my grandmother's birthday. And when you call them, and it's always, I lost my cell phone. They always say that. And if it's more than a week, then they were in the hospital. So if you can't reach them that day, they lost the charger or they lost their cell phone. If a week goes by and you didn't hear from them, they were in the hospital. And if it's a Sunday and you invite them to do something, it's their grandmother's birthday. I heard it so many times, one after another. And not only from women that I dated, but I heard it from my employees, and I heard it from other people, businesses, like my lawyer. Why didn't you call me? I was in the hospital. Yeah, right. Whatever. Everybody's in the hospital. So I went on this one date, and you got to do what they want to do. It was two girls because she wanted to bring her friend. It was fine, whatever. It ends up her friend was really nice, and I immediately fallen in love with her friend. Her friend was really cool. And she wasn't such a bad woman. She was one of the better women that I met. But it was the same thing. We go to the restaurant that she had to have picked it because I don't know anything about this. I'd never been to this place before. Oh, I think the restaurant that she picked was closed. It was out of business. And I knew that the two of them were going to show up. And I got there and I called, and the same bullshit. They're not there. Well, by this time I had gotten a lot smarter, and I have had so many women leave me hungry, waiting for dinner for an hour, that I was done with it. I mean, it probably happened 100 times at this point because I'm 38 years old. Happened with so many American women, so many Colombian women, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. My policy is now that I go to the place where we're supposed to meet. I order my food. I eat it. If they're not there by the time I'm paid, I go home. So I had already ordered my food, and I don't recall exactly what happened. And this might have been the first time that I did it. So I waited 15 minutes, call them, they're not there, and then at some point I'm like, I'm so hungry, I'm not going to wait, I'm just going to order my food, because I seem to recall that they may have arrived maybe before my food had arrived, because when they got there, they wanted to go to a different restaurant because we knew that their place was closed, and I just went to the place next door, and there's no other restaurant on the street. I'm like, F you, I waited for you for an hour. I'm not going to go running all around the city to find another place. I said, we're going to sit here. And you know what? They sat there. I was like, ooh, cool. And it wasn't the last time I saw her. And I remember my food arriving, and maybe they ordered something, and that's it. So we saw each other again. The craziness continues. She had to bring her friend again, and I said, okay, fine, because I really liked this other girl. She was sweet. And we went to a beach resort. And you got to pay a lot of money to go to a beach resort. It's not a cheap thing. But I had told her beforehand, I know I'm going to fall asleep because I was up all night or something like that. I'm going to tell you now, I want to see you again, and I know that you can only see me on Saturday, but I'm going to fall asleep at some point during the day. So we went to the beach resort, and at some point I fell asleep. And of course, they were always making fun of me falling asleep, or because of I never owned a smartphone. And I was like this, looking at my phone, and the lettering was so small, and I was going like this, and they're laughing at me, right? And it was like, it might have been my first smartphone. I never owned one before because I don't care. I don't care about this. I got a computer. My computer does everything better than a smartphone. I'm not addicted to a smartphone. So they were laughing at me periodically about what I was eating and stuff like that. And at some point, they came to me and said, can we take a taxi home instead of the bus? I said, yeah, we could. And they said, okay. And then as time went by, I realized that I was, nodding off, and we're at the beach, and I'm on the lounge chair, and they're like 10 feet away from me, sitting in their chairs. And I'm like, why aren't they sitting next to me? And I don't recall. Okay, so I have a disability, and I walk with crutches. However, sometimes I fight through the pain and I don't bring the crutches with me. Typically on a date, I don't use the crutches. It's possible that I tell people I walk with crutches. I tell people. I always do. And I say, you got to understand, I walk with crutches. I got to sit down. I can't stand up for long periods of time. If we go on a date, I'm going to be sitting down somewhere waiting for you. Okay? So, I don't think I had the crutches that day, but we took the bus to get there. And it was a long bus ride. It was like, maybe it could have been a 2-hour bus ride because they never run on schedule. And at some point I was like, okay, I know the schedule for the bus, and we got to get back home. And I went up to them and I said, and I'm thinking in my mind, this is not a date going well. I don't want to see this girl again, although I'd like to see her friend. And I'm like, the whole time they wouldn't even sit next to me. And it kind of hurt my feelings that they were laughing at me. And that, like, they would be there laughing at me, and then one of them would walk over and say something to me, and then they would walk back, and I'm like, why don't you just sit with me? I can't walk. Okay? Give me a effing break. And so these women are actually being rude. And you know what? Anytime I've been on lots of dates with women that brought a friend along, let's say 10 or 15, they're always effing rude. They're the worst dates I've ever had. But I've done double dating before. Those are the best dates I've ever had. But when a girl says she wants to bring somebody along, never a good date. So, I said it's getting to be 6 o'clock, and we left at like 8 in the morning. So we've been with each other for 10 hours at this point. And I said, let's go so we can catch the bus. And they said, you lied. And I was like, what are you talking about? He said, you lied. You said we could take the taxi. I said, yeah, I did say we could take the taxi. You lied. They're going on. I said, no, I did not lie to you. And they're going on, you lied, you lied, you lied. And they're both yelling at me. Both of them, screaming at me. I said we could take a taxi. I didn't say we would take the taxi. You understand? So the English was not their native language. They did not understand. I said we could. I didn't say we would. And the taxi's expensive. It's $250, I believe it was, to take a taxi, because this is the resort out in the middle of nowhere. You got to pay for the taxi to take you back to the city, which is going to be, let's say, an hour and a half, and to come back. You got to pay for him to go both ways. And he doesn't know anything about the city where you're going to. He only knows the resort town. And he needs to go to the court, some building, government building, to get permission to take me to the other city because I'm a foreigner. They have to, and it costs him like $20, and he's got to fill it out with my name and put my ID number and all that stuff. So there's a cost involved, and the gas is more expensive. And I lived on the far side of the city, outside the city. So he had to drive all the way through the city that he doesn't know to the other side of the city. And I know because I've taken the taxi many times. And I know that they don't know, and I have to explain to them how to get home and all that stuff. And you know what? I don't even know how to get home. But luckily, I lived close enough to the highway that if you get to the highway, I know how to get to my house. And the highway goes around the city to the north. And we were coming from the south. You just go over the bridge into the city and keep on going. So they kept calling me a liar, and I said, you girls are crazy. And I understand that it was a miscommunication, but the way they reacted was not appropriate. They just could not accept the fact that it was a miscommunication, and I never saw them again. So I was in Peru, and for some reason, I was with like 3 or 4 women. I remember there being a lot of women around. And it's possible that there were other people with us. Maybe we were at a group function and we all decided to go out to see a movie, which is why there were so many women with me. Because it's not like I'm going to schedule a date for 3 women at the same time. So for some reason, there were a lot of women, and it was at night. And we must have been at a party, and I said, hey, let's go see a movie. I want to go see a movie. And I really only wanted to go out with one of the women. And we had gone somewhere with this group, me and a bunch of women, and there might have been a guy there. And there were other guys. There were other men, and there were lots of other women. And we must have had dinner. We were in some sort of a building. I don't think it was a hotel because I'd never been there before. And there was this one girl crying like a baby. I don't want to go see the movie. And she was controlling everything. She was trying to control everything. I don't want to see the movie. 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 And then time had gone by, and like an hour or half an hour had gone by, and she probably didn't speak English, and I didn't speak Spanish. My Spanish was very basic. And at some point she said, okay, let's go. But what she was doing was stalling so that we would miss the movie. And we did miss the movie, and we didn't see the movie. And what I learned is that that was a tactic that women did to me often. I would invite them to go see a movie, and they would say, when? And it'd be like 2 o'clock, and I would say it's 6:30. The movie starts at 6:30, and then an hour later they would say where, and I would say, well, at this particular mall, and then I would wait another hour, and they would say, what time again? And I would respond 6:30. Now keep in mind we're approaching 6:30, and then they would maybe wait another hour and say, where are we going to meet? And I would respond saying, at the mall, we got to hurry. Otherwise, we're going to miss the movie. And then they would say, okay, let's go. And then I would respond back saying, no, it's too late. It's 6:30. And then they would respond back saying, let's go out dancing. And this happened to me many times. And there was one time when it happened, I was like, another one. They want to do what they want to do, and they would delay, so that we would do something different. So there was another issue where I would meet a woman, and I'd be like, well, I'm only going to be in the city for 1 week because I didn't live in South America at the time, and I was just visiting for a week. Or maybe I was there for 3 weeks, I don't remember. And you would say, let's go on a date, and they would say, when? No. And it would be the day that they choose, and they would pick the night before my flight. And I'd be like, why don't we do it tonight or tomorrow? I mean, if we like each other, we could see each other again this week. So there were women that would do that. And it wasn't often, but when someone does that, that's a bad sign, right? And I just want to say that I had a lot of other really crazy dates. I just have forgotten them all because it was 20 years ago. So there was this other woman where she had a copy of my profile with her. And we were talking, we had a lot of fun. And at some point she looks up, oh my God, you're conservative. I'm a liberal. And then she said, you don't drink alcohol. You don't do drugs. I have done drugs, and I will do them again, she says to me. She was a cute girl, and one of the things that I noticed about these women is I would always show up with a suit on, and they would show up like they were homeless. They never dressed nice, except for Steph. Steph is a different story, funny story, okay? So this girl I never saw again. And then there was this other woman who we had our profiles, and we basically wrote exactly the same thing in our profiles, like word for word. It's like we copied each other. And we met and we spoke, and this is what she said to me. She said, I realized that our profiles are identical. I said, yeah, I noticed the same thing. She said, that's why I agreed to meet with you. And the way she said it was like she's doing me a favor. And then she said, I figure I'd give you a half an hour. And then, and she was, very well dressed, very beautiful. And then after like a half hour, she said, okay, I'm leaving. Bye. That was it. There was another woman who told me she had to leave because she had to take care of her cat. And I had a dog and a cat. You don't need to go home and take care of your cat. That's just nonsense. Cats care less when you come home. So, oh, God, that was a good one. Oh, I forgot it. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Steph is, okay, I will tell you Steph. We'll talk about Steph. Oh, okay. It was a girl in Rochester, New York. So I went on this date with this woman, and when I met her, I was like, this woman is perfect. I love everything about her. She was beautiful. She had a great job. She was intelligent. We had everything in common. And one thing after another. It just went on and on and on and on. And she was not from Rochester. She was from Washington, D.C. And I was very naive when I was younger because women treated me like garbage my whole life. So, got more interesting stories coming. And she stood up, and I was really excited. And she literally stood right next to me. And I'm thinking, I'm sitting down in the chair at the restaurant, maybe getting my wallet out to pay or something. And I'm thinking, her crotch is really close to my face. That's what I'm thinking, when she's standing next to me. When a girl stands that close to you, she likes you. And I got up, and we walked outside. You really want to take care of phone numbers before you go outside. Lesson learned this night. And we walked through the parking lot. This might have been before I was disabled. I don't remember. It's hard to remember. And because I didn't have my crutches. I have a very nice car, and people will judge you because of the car you have. So I didn't want her to see my car because I'm not a shallow person. I don't want people to want me for my money. I used to be a wealthy person. And I don't judge people by their looks. I've dated tons of beautiful women. I only care about the personality. And I've had lots of ugly girlfriends. My girlfriends would be described as ugly okay, so the first one was cute, but, she's fat. And so I didn't want her to see my car. And we're standing there in the parking lot, and I had to stop. I said, I don't want her to see my car. I don't want her to misjudge me. I don't want her to date me for the wrong reasons. And I said, could I have your phone number? And she was literally standing this far away from me, as close as you could stand next to someone without touching. And she pretended to go through her purse, shows this immense confusion, opens up her purse, didn't really look, and then she went like this because she was so close to me, and she said, nice to meet you. And then she left. And I understand that she wanted to kiss and be romantic and all that stuff. But the problem is, I had been on so many dates with women that if you give them any sense that you're going to be 1 millimeter closer to them, they will flip out. That I became the type of person that would not take that chance anymore. And like I said, never saw her again. So there was this other woman that I met, and we went on the date. We were living in New York City, and usually after a date, I would say, which way are you headed? Do you want to share a taxi or something like that? She was headed downtown. She was getting off on 14th Street or West 4th Street, where the basketball court is. Maybe it's West 4th is what it's called. And I would get off a stop or two later. And we were sitting on the train, and I'm a very passive, naive guy, had a very abusive mother, crazy abusive mother. And that will be a very long video. And I'm just sitting there and, talking to her. And when we got to her stop, I remember it was wintertime because I'm pretty sure I had a big jacket on. I wanted to be polite. And as she stood up, I stood up, and she screamed. Train filled with people. She screamed, ran out the door. And I stood there in shock and sat down. And all these women, all the people on the train, they saw what happened. They saw that we both stood up at the same time as she ran off. And these people on the train did not get off at that stop. They were all just sitting. So I had to sit there, get off at the next stop. They probably saw me sitting there confused, and then I got off at the next stop. that was one of the weird people that I met. So then the issue with Steph. Now, Steph was the first woman that I dated in New York City. And what happened was the profiles at the dating service were handwritten. And I went through like 1,000 profiles and said, that's the girl right there. Everyone has sloppy handwriting. And her handwriting was beautiful. And handwriting, I know how to do handwriting analysis. And I know what to look for. And I said, this girl's going to be absolutely amazing. And she was the only one who had this amazing handwriting. So I said I wanted to meet her. It took like a month or 2 weeks or whatever before she responded. You know, these things take time. And she was the best woman I ever went on a date with. She had the best job, and she was beautiful. She dressed amazing, and while I was talking to her, we just went back and forth, and you could see her smile on her face. Everything she said, she was laughing, and it wasn't a laugh like I was making her laugh because it was funny. She was excited to know me. There was a connection there, and I was like, I'm so happy to have met this woman. And she said, I'm going to drive you home. She had a car. She lived in Staten Island. I lived in Little Italy. She was Italian. I'm Italian. And I actually knew her brother. We didn't know at the time, but we later found out that we had friends in common. So, and she knew some of my friends too. And oh, you know what? We went to the same school. So we also found out we went to the same university. She was also older than me. She 3 or 4 years older. I don't remember. Being my age, I was like 25, 26, 27. All the women I dated were older than me. That's just the way it is. I was always the youngest. And the average women were like 35. Lots of women 35 years old. So she dropped me off. I got out of the car. I said, thank you. It was very nice to meet you. And she said, oh, how are we going to get in touch with each other? I said, here's my phone number. So she knew my building. She knew where we dropped me off. It's the Puck building. Not hard to find. And she went home. And she was a good driver, which is not common for women. My ex-girlfriend, they were all named Kathy, was absolutely could not be trusted behind the wheel. She was a dangerous driver. And she would not drive. I had to do all the driving. She wouldn't. And trust me, you wouldn't want her to. So, and my friend Andrew, who is a male, was a horrible driver, okay? And we were afraid when he was driving a car. Not just women. So, I had her phone number. And I was naive. I called her 5 times. No answer. Not 5 times in one day. Over the course of, a week or 2. And on the 5th phone call, her mother answered the phone. And she did not understand what I was saying. And I was talking to her. She didn't understand what I was saying. And I said, is Steph there? She said, what? I said, is Steph there? And she was saying, what? She was saying it really loud. What? So she was speaking the way a deaf person, my aunt is deaf, I don't think my deaf is a loud person, but some people who are deaf speak more loudly. She was saying, what, really loud. And then I heard her say Steph, and I heard Steph say what really loud. And it's scary when you hear people screaming at each other. So what's going on? And Steph came to the phone, and we spoke, and she said, oh, my mother's can't hear. And we spoke, and she said, I'm at my mother's house. Ding, 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 ding. So you gave me your mother's phone number. Okay? It wasn't a cell phone. And we ended up going out many times. And I was like, wow, I got a girlfriend. And every date was a great date. We always had fun. We went hiking. We did things like that. I went over her house for Thanksgiving or Christmas or we must have done both. It must have been Thanksgiving and Christmas because I kind of remember twice. And her father was amazing. I loved her father. He didn't have a leg. He was disabled also. And her brother was there. I knew her brother. And her mother, I really don't remember anything about. And she told me lots of stories about her family. And she showed me where she went when she was a kid and where she used to hang out. And we went to her brother's apartment for a party. And that was the Christmas one. And we went hiking somewhere. Cold Springs, New York rings a bell. What's that? Hudson Valley. We went whitewater rafting. But I could sense that she was a little cold. On our, I don't think it was the first, on the second date, something weird happened. We were supposed to meet in Little Italy at a particular restaurant. And I went to Little Italy, and I really didn't know the area very well, even though I lived a few blocks away. We were going to one of the Italian restaurants, and I'm standing outside this restaurant for like a half an hour, and it's cold, and I hated standing out there, and this guy came up to me, and he said, "Are you waiting for someone? You've been standing out here for a long time. There's another restaurant with the same name around the corner." I said, "Oh, okay." And I rushed to the restaurant, and I got there, and I said, "Oh, you know what? I was at the wrong restaurant, and the guy told me that it had the same name. It had the same name, but one was a bakery and one was a restaurant, and they weren't the same company." So that was just a weird thing that happened. So, Steph, what happened over time was that I was only seeing her like once a month, and months were going by, and I'm like thinking, am I going to see this girl like 12 times a year? And sometimes I didn't see her. I said, this is not working out. There's something weird going on here. I know she's a busy person because she had a job that entitled herself to a lot of responsibility. So I knew that she was a busy person, and I could not expect her to just be available all the time. And at some point, I just never heard from her again. And then like 2 months later, she said, "Oh, something happened. My father was in the hospital." That's the excuse that she gave. And then I actually did see her again after that, but like a year later. Or actually, no, I saw her twice again. We went hiking like 2 years later, and I saw her again at the Christmas party. So the Christmas party was a year later, but the Christmas party was because she wanted to introduce me to her friend. But the problem is, I sort of had to invite my girlfriend. I think I told her, I got a girlfriend, so she told me, bring your girlfriend. And I got to meet the other woman who she wanted to introduce me to, but, it was too late. So I had told my girlfriend, I said, okay, I know this is not Crazy Dates, but I'm going to tell the story anyway because I remembered it now. Steph invited me to a Christmas dinner, and I don't think she had told me about introducing me to her friend or not. But she knew I was a nice person because I am a nice person. And she said, "My friend is a nice person, and I know that you're a nice person also, so I want to introduce the two of you." And I hung up the phone, and I probably called my girlfriend immediately, and we were definitely speaking every day. And we were going out like 3 or 4 nights a week. And I said to her, "Oh, I got invited to a Christmas party." And she screamed at me. She said, "By who?" And she said it really loud. And I was like, no one had spoken to me like that. And I was like, by my ex-girlfriend. Oh, I don't know if I said immediately by my ex-girlfriend, but at some point I said, my ex-girlfriend invited me to a Christmas party as someone who I dated a long time ago, a year ago, before I met you. And I guess I may have told her, I would like to go to the Christmas party. I may have told her that. Or she may have said, "Okay, I'll go," or something like that. It must have been that if she had told me don't go, I probably would have said, "Okay, I won't go," because I was scared of her, which is another story. But she said she would go. Or maybe I said we were invited, and she said she would go. And she came over to my house, and something weird. Okay, she had left her glasses at my house, and I had a dog and a cat. And we went to the party, and in the elevator, we were in a building on the 50th floor we had to go to, I think. In the elevator, all of a sudden she was really bitchy at me, and she was saying all these nasty things. And I was like, "Why are you being so mean to me?" You're just bitchy, bitchy, bitchy. And it wasn't like bringing up past things I had done because I hadn't done anything in the past. She's just starting to be real bitchy. Elevator doors open. She's being bitchy, 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 insulting me or whatever. Knocked on the door opened, and all of a sudden, "Oh, hi, how are you?" And when I thought about it, I don't know if I figured it out immediately. I said, okay, she did that on purpose because she must have wanted me to be unhappy when I walked in the door or something. I don't know. And we sat at the table. My girlfriend might have even have been with her boyfriend. I don't know. I don't think, to be honest, I don't think her boyfriend was there. And I don't think she had a boyfriend, because wouldn't her boyfriend have been there? So I think that's one of the things. And I didn't even think about that. We're sitting at this big table, like 5 or 6 people. Her brother was there. It was her brother's apartment. I think I had been there before. I don't remember. Yeah, I had. And now that I think about it, her boyfriend, she either didn't have one, there was no boyfriend there for her. And didn't think about that. Wow, amazing. So I thought we had a good time. And on the way home, my girlfriend said, I can't find my glasses. I forgot my glasses. And I said, oh, shit. This is not good. Where did you leave them? In your apartment. Ah, the cat is the instigator. The cat is going to knock those glasses on the floor, and the dog's going to chew on them. And when we got home, that's what happened. Let's see, were there other crazy date stories? I went on a date on September 11th in New York City and Manhattan on the day of September 11th after the terrorist attacks. This is in another one of my videos. So I had a date that day, and the dating service called me and said, do you want to cancel? I said, if she goes, I'll go. We both showed up, and it was an Iranian woman. She spoke perfect English. And the first thing she did was said, I want to be able to tell you dirty jokes. And as soon as she said that, it turned me off, which is surprising because the rest of the date, I liked talking to her. And I said, where are you from? She said, Persia. And I was like, I was a young guy. When you hear somebody say Persia, your mind starts thinking, are you not? I'm not thinking, is she a terrorist? But there's so much negative propaganda about Iran. That's what was thinking through my mind. Iran was the boogeyman. So she said Persia, and it kind of set me off. But I'm like, I'm not a biased person. I'm going to sit here. I'm going to have a date with this girl. And I said, okay, this was actually a good date, and I really liked talking to her. And I kind of regret not seeing her again. It's very rare that I don't call a woman for a second date. And it's possible that I did, and she didn't respond to me. But I'm going to say that because we had such a great date, the likelihood of her not calling me back should have been really low. So I don't remember. She talked about her city being bombed when she was a kid. She talked about sexism. That's not something you talk about a date. When you're a woman and you go on a date with a man and you start saying why you think men are sexist, you just ruined the date. She was telling me, men are sexist. I can't get ahead in my field. And I'm like, well, I didn't think, I just accepted it. But if she said that to me now, I'm going to be like, guess what? Not everybody gets to be owner of the company. That's the way it is. She was a doctor. You're a doctor now. You're going to be a doctor for the rest of your life. You want to be the head doctor, you better prove your worthiness. And if you think it's because of discrimination, then you're not worthy of it. You got to be a hard worker, and no one is going to deny you a job if you know how to do it better than everybody else. So when I was younger than this, put an ad in a newspaper, put a personal ad in a newspaper. I was like 18 years old, and this girl called me, and she was a sweet girl, and this is the only time this ever happened, the only time I ever did it. She was a sweet girl. We had a nice conversation. She said, so you want to meet? I said, no. And I was like, I can't believe I just said that, not knowing the future that was going to come down the road with all the no's that I heard the rest of my life. There was another time I was like 18, 19, 20 years old. We were at the beach, Jones Beach, and I was sitting on this bench, and this girl came and sat next to me. She turned to me and she said, hi. And she looked really nervous. And I turned to her and I said, hi. And she looked like I was about to kill her. She looked nervous. She was looking at me like she was really nervous. And we spoke more, but not very much. She might have said, what's your name? And I said, David. And I'm thinking, why are you asking me this? You know, that's the thoughts going through my mind. And then she got up and she left. And at the time, I was like, you know, this weird girl sat next to me. She said hi, and you asked me what's my name. Never happened to me in my life. And I realize now she wanted to get to know me. I didn't know it at the time. So there was this other time. It's a funny story that's related where my girlfriend in college came into my room crying. This crazy people. She's crying. And she's crying and crying. No, she wasn't my girlfriend at the time. She came into my room. She was crying and crying and crying. And there's another story in my videos about her crying about, it's a rape video. She was crying because of fear mongering. No one actually really got raped, but people were saying you have to be wary of rape anyway, even though nobody was raped. No one was even accused of rape. I'm going to clarify that. So she was crying because of an incident that involved someone that was not even accused of rape. Okay, so now this time she's crying and crying, and then you gotta, okay, what's the big deal? And this time I didn't know what a crazy person she was because I hadn't dated her yet. And she said, John is going to the dinner with, and then some other girl's name, Tracy. John and Tracy are going out to eat. It's like, what the hell's wrong with you? I didn't say that. And I'm thinking, at the time, I was not a person who would, it took me a long time to analyze, what the hell is she talking about? And I'm like, I had no response to this. I'm like, what is she talking about? John and Tracy are going out to eat. Huh. Now I would say, what the fuck are you talking, you know? So it was it was like weeks later. Her friend, I believe, sat in front of me in my German language class. And she was really beautiful. And I remember sitting here thinking about this girl, this beautiful girl sitting in front of me. I only got to see the back of her head. And I'm thinking to myself, I spent a lot of time, John and Tracy went out to eat. And this made Debbie cry. John and Tracy went out to eat. And I thought about this for days and days and hours. And I was like, oh, Debbie must like John. And John was a cool guy. He had lots of money. They called him the fish man because he was in the fish business. And his father was wealthy. His father owned shoe stores. And he had a Jeep Wrangler, which was cool at the time. And he would always park it illegally, which is always, of course, cool also. And he had his aquarium with all these fish in the dorm room. And he was always, you know, flippant. Flip? You know, like, yeah, cool, whatever. So that was another crazy story about a girl that I knew. I had lots of crazy. What was happening when I lived in New York City is it was getting to the point where every date that I went on, the girl was showing me that in some way that she was crazy. And it was just one crazy girl after another. And it wasn't like the first story that I told, oh, he got up and made a phone call for 30 minutes. I mean, this was crazy behavior happening. Like, I went on this date with this girl, and she says, my father abused me as a child. I was like, why that's not something you tell somebody at the beginning of the date. And I remember her saying, my father told me when you rip up a document to put it into different trash cans. It was like, you know, I figured that out on my own. So she threw this piece of paper away, and we were going to a concert for a music group called They Might Be Giants. And it was in the Hudson Valley. It was far away. We had to take the train there, and all of her friends, we're just setting up for a bad date. And she was telling me all this crazy stuff like, I love bowling. I was like, oh, really? Why? Well, I've only been once. I said, okay. And it was with They Might Be Giants. I won a contest with They Might Be Giants. And I got to go bowling with them. And I said, okay. And then she said, I've seen them like 260 times. I was like, what? She had been to like, she said like 260, some crazy number. Like, is that even possible? How many concerts do these people have? At the time, I just accepted whatever number she said. She said some crazy number, like 260. And I didn't. And at the time, now I'm thinking that can't possibly be true. Even if she had said 10 times, they're not going to do that many concerts in the New York City area. But that's what she told me. And she loved them, and she told me about how she loves all the guys, and They Might Be Giants. And the band isn't that bad. They had some good songs. The one about the King of Spain is a good song. So if you like comedy, look up King of Spain. Now he works at the Pizza. So when we got there, we were with her friends, and I remember standing there looking at the view, and I remember looking at all the mountains because had a view of the mountainside. And she comes up to me and she says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm just taking a picture." I didn't have a camera. And she looked at me like, "Okay." It's like, is it really that bad to say that? So when the concert started, she was obsessed with hand wipes. She does this all the time. She said, "You don't bring hand wipes with you?" And I was like, "No, why would I bring hand wipes with me?" So she's a concert goer. She knows that there's no bathroom. She knows she needs a hand wipe. I don't go to these things. In fact, I thought that I had never been to a concert in my life until now. I just realized I've been to a They Might Be Giants concert. When they started playing, she and her friends stood up, danced the whole time like I wasn't there. And when she danced like she was being filmed for a music video. And if you watch like Charlie Brown, that's all I saw was the back of her dancing the whole time, like she was the highest person in the world. She wasn't like dancing casually. She was really into it. These people, they were going nuts over this music. They were absolutely fanatical about this music. And it's not a good date because you're really not getting to know a person, anything about the person. All I know is she's fanatical about They Might Be Giants. And one of the things that she had mentioned is that all of her friends are people that she only knows because they met at concerts for They Might Be Giants. And they were weird people. They look like stoners and stuff like that. Oh, F. I just remembered another date and forgot it. Okay. This was in New York. It was around 10 or 15 years ago, before YouTube. And I was on this date, another double date. No, it wasn't a double date. It was a date where the girl brought a friend. And we were talking, and she said she liked comedy. I said, "Okay, who's your favorite comedian?" And she says, "Brian Regan." Could have been around 2006. I'm going to say 2006. And I said to her, "Brian Regan is my favorite comedian also." And she said, "Oh, I really like him." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "I go to all of his shows." It said Syracuse, Rochester, Binghamton, Buffalo, Albany, Rome, Watertown. She's naming all these different cities. She said, "I've seen 4 of his shows." Whenever she's talking about how she goes to all of his shows, and she said that one day after one of the shows, Brian Regan went up to her and said, "Are you stalking me?" So that was a funny story that she said. I don't know why I never saw her again. So there was this other girl. I don't think we hadn't met. We somehow got in touch over the phone. So it had to have been through the dating website. Now this girl, we're talking on the phone, and she says something to me, and I gave her the answer. I don't remember what it was. And she said, "Strike 1. And then she said something else. She asked me a question, and she said, "Strike 2. And she asked me another question, and she said, "Strike 3. And I'm thinking in my mind, F you. You're not, that's what I would say today. I would say, F you. Strike 3 for you. I remember that one of the questions is what's your favorite drink? And I said, probably Dr. Pepper. And she never responded with her favorite drink. But at the time, I was thinking, that's my favorite drink. And that was it. But I realized that she's talking about alcohol. So that was just a weird phone call related thing. Let's see, what other ones were there? I have memories of different women, but I don't remember what happened. That's the issue. Yeah, you know what? Those I think are the only ones that I remembered over the years. thinking about first dates with, okay, I already told that one. Okay, so let's leave it at that. Questions or comments, please post below.